Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Empowering Family Members as Learning Coaches. I'd like to now introduce Tatiana DeGrossa.
Thank you, Michelle. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to take this opportunity to tell you more about SPAN Parent Advocacy Network. Since 1987, families in New Jersey and beyond have made SPAN their first stop for support and resources. Today, SPAN's projects and programs for parents of children from birth to age 26 and for women of childbearing age have expanded from a kitchen table to over 20 national, regional, local programs funded by government agencies, foundations, and fee-for-service contracts. These programs cover education, health and mental health, human services, child care, and child welfare. Our mission is to empower and support families and inform and involve professionals interested in the healthy development and education of children and youth. Our foremost commitment to the children is to the children and families with the greatest need due to disability or special health and mental health needs, poverty, discrimination based on race, ethnicity, gender, language, immigrant or homeless status, involvement in the child welfare or juvenile justice systems, geographic location, and other special circumstances. In order to achieve this mission, SPAN's core programs help families, professionals, and policymakers know the rights of families and their children, access resources and information, secure appropriate services, navigate various systems that serve children and families, keep children healthy and in school or learning at home, prepare for life after high school, connect with other parents who understand, become catalysts to improve services for children and families, start and run parent advisory, advocacy, or other support groups, become effective partners in improving schools, and advocate for other children and families. Please visit our website for additional information, and in a few seconds I will post the link to our website in the questions panel. This webinar is brought to you by the START Engaging Parents of Students with Disabilities in Schools project, which is a partnership between the New Jersey Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs, and SPAN Parent Advocacy Network. We offer programs and services that support the engagement of families to improve outcomes for students, including developing and sustaining special education parent advisory and support groups and communities and school districts. Through workshops, regional meetings, webinars, and parent leadership development activities, we help parents and parent leaders to become informed and active participants in their child's education. Partner with educators in improving educational programs for students with disabilities, particularly in the area of inclusion. Start and strengthen special education parent advisory groups or parent support groups, and increase effective family engagement to improve special education programs, policy, and practices in schools, districts, and communities. And allow me to introduce the members of the START EPSD team who are here with me today. All of us serve as parent group specialists. In addition, Debbie Esposito and I, Tatiana DeGrossa, co-directing the project. Debbie is also our literacy coordinator. And to connect with our team, please visit our webpage, and the link to the webpage I will also add to the questions panel in just a minute. I just wanted to add quickly that all of us on our team are working parents who live in New Jersey and therefore have been home with our school-age children since early March. We have all had our own struggles finding a balance between family and work obligations and keeping our kiddos motivated and focused in regard to online learning. And of course, communicating with schools and educators about how our children and we as parents are feeling right now. In preparation for this webinar, we bonded over shared experiences this past few months, and we all agreed that the strategies we're about to share with you on this webinar today are the ones that have helped us to stay calm and allowed us to tackle each day as a new learning opportunity. We've enjoyed learning new and better techniques from today's guest speaker, Dr. Jamie Zabulski, whom Debbie will introduce next. Debbie?
Thanks, Tatiana. Before I introduce our guest speaker, I want to share with you that today is only the first session in a series of 3 webinars focused on how families are responding to school closures during the COVID-19 health crisis, and the strategies that may be helpful during the spring and summer months as we all attempt to help children cope with this situation in the best way possible. There is a save the date that is part of the handouts on this webinar, so I encourage you to download that. So before we get started, we wanted to briefly review our goals for this webinar. At the end of this webinar, we really want you to be able to consider how to adjust your expectations of yourself and your children to support mental health as well as learning needs. We want you to be able to set realistic learning goals for your children during this time and to create a flexible family schedule to support learning. We want you to finally be able to advocate for your child within the school system. We all want to do everything we can to help children's minds and bodies stay active and engaged, but we know that there are many obstacles to overcome, even each hour and each day. And that's everyone's situation is unique. For that reason, we'll try to provide some general tips and strategies that can work for many families and hope that you can adapt them to your family's needs and schedule. Now, allow me to introduce our guest speaker, who will talk about the strategies we want to discuss today. So our goal on the START EPSD project is always to provide you with the best practices based on information that is both current and evidence-based. In order to do that, on this webinar, we've invited a guest speaker who is an author, professor at Fairleigh Dickinson University, and a school psychologist. Jamie Zabolski is the co-author of Booksmart, How to Develop and Support Motivated Readers. Jamie's work with families is motivated by her belief that teaching parents to serve as their children's teachers and therapists is tremendously powerful. This is a message that may be very reassuring to hear during this time when we are all spending so much time at home with our children. We're grateful to be able to work with Dr. Zabolski as a literacy consultant on the START team. She embodies the SPAN philosophy of empowered parents, educated, engaged, and effective. So without further ado, Dr. Jamie Zabolski.
Thanks so much, Debbie. It's really nice to be here today and joining you all. And before we begin sharing the strategies that we're going to talk about today, we wanted to start off offering a disclaimer, as Debbie acknowledged a moment ago, just letting you know that we're really aware of the fact that educators and support staff like us need to be sure that we don't make assumptions about any particular family's circumstances or needs at this time. And one of the really challenging things about this time, and especially about giving other people advice about the right way to do things right now, is that there is so much variability in every family's experiences. There are so many factors that we need to consider when we're thinking about how to support kiddos right now. And these include the physical health of your immediate and extended family members, because there are so many families where people have experienced illness or loss, and focusing on health needs and coping with grief have to take precedence over schoolwork. We need to think about families' mental health needs, as we know that no one does their best learning when they're scared or sad, and that this challenging time can exacerbate the mental health needs of folks with anxiety or depression, and that changes in routine can be particularly difficult for kiddos with ADHD or spectrum disorders or other challenges that make navigating this time even more difficult than it is for everybody already. We know that kiddos have different learning needs, and some of you might have children who receive support services from their schools that are diminished during this time, and therefore they need more assistance from their families, but also that giving this support is not equally easy for all families. Some parents might be essential workers or required to work full-time without much flexibility, even if they are the only adult in the household. And some parents might not easily be able to communicate with teachers in their primary language. Some families might not have access to resources that allow kiddos to access instructional materials from school, and there's a lot of variability in the quality and quantity of instruction that is being provided by districts. And not all families have easy access to books, games, puzzles, and outdoor space, all of which can help add choice and novelty into a child's day and keep them from feeling frustrated, stressed, or sad. So I've already talked for a while now, and these are just a few of the factors that we need to consider. Please know that we're really aware that there's no cookie cutter answer about how to manage this time for all families. You need to do what's best for you given the circumstances, and we hope that what we can do today is help you feel comfortable doing what is best for your family and advocating to your child's school based on these needs. We next want to talk a little bit about what family members are doing right now and how we're talking about this time. We know that as we begin to think about engaging family members as learning coaches, it's really important for us to think about what we're expecting of ourselves right now and what's being expected of us by school districts. So we want to talk a little bit about the different language that's used to talk about this time. We know for those of us who began sheltering in place back in March, the terms that we were often using at first were remote learning and homeschooling. And these are really terms that imply that what we're doing right now is planned, structured, and similar to what happens regularly, right? So our kiddos are still learning, they're just doing it remotely. They're still going to school, they're just doing it at home. And so many of us had really big goals and aspirations during these first few weeks of sheltering in place, hoping that we'd be able to keep up with similar schedules to what went on in school and meet all of the expectations of a traditional schooling experience. And I think what many of us found, and as a few of my colleagues have talked about already, is that a lot of those goals fell by the wayside for reasons that are really expected and normal during a time like this, which is not normal at all. We're going through a nationwide and a global crisis right now. And so we began to talk about what we were doing instead as crisis schooling. And what crisis schooling really means is that we are trying to provide kiddos with the best supports we can during a time of crisis where there is trauma and there is grief and there is uncertainty, and this is an unplanned situation. But I think what you hear a little bit as I'm talking is that we went from hoping things could be done normally to really feeling like everyone was experiencing this crisis and this challenge. And now, as we move on to May and as we start this webinar, we're really hoping that we can find a new normal path forward that lets us level out a little bit. And so what we're thinking about now is how we can really prevent the summer slide, as we often do in the end of a school year, but really during what feels like the longest summer ever. And so moving to this term helps us remember that the strategies that have worked for us in the past can work for us again now, that we're really trying to find this new normal during a time where we may be trying to support and enrich our children's experiences when days are long and academic learning might not be our children's first priority, the same way that's often true during the summer. People have said often throughout this crisis that this time is a marathon and not a sprint. And so thinking about the strategies that are sustainable for us over the next several weeks or over the next several months can be a more adaptive way of thinking about how to provide these supports. And the reason that we're encouraging folks to adjust their language and adjust the terms that we're using when we talk about this time is because it can be a real struggle when we start thinking about this next stretch of home learning and moving towards thinking about it as a response to the crisis and an extension of the summer may help you set appropriate and achievable expectations and goals that will support mental health. If we know that no one does their best work or their best concentrating when they're sad or when they're stressed, it makes sense to set goals that we can achieve with this in mind, so with that we can celebrate our small successes, even on days that are challenging. We also know that setting realistic goals will help you support learning for your children in the most important areas for them personally, rather than trying to accomplish everything, because we know that it's just not possible to accomplish all of the things that we'd want to see happen in a traditional school setting at home right now. We want you to leave this webinar knowing that being a good learning coach for your child sometimes looks like giving up on assignments early, doling out extra snacks, or taking more breaks. The most important thing we can all learn from this time is how to treat ourselves and others kindly, and how to regroup when we're feeling overwhelmed. That's a huge learning lesson for our children. And so as we think about how to focus on the goals that are most important to us, we want to ask you to take a few seconds now to jot down on a piece of paper that you have nearby or anything accessible, a goal that you have for your child right now, the primary thing that you're really focused on, whether that means reading with fluency, learning math facts, learning how to cope with frustration more calmly. Think about the goal that is most important to you and that is causing you to feel most preoccupied about what your child's reentry to formal schooling will be like. We're going to talk a little bit more later in this webinar about how to achieve that goal. And so for now, I'm going to be quiet for just a few seconds so you can think about that goal, and then turn this over to my colleagues who will ask you to complete a brief poll.
Thanks, Jamie. So hi again, everyone. So we really want to hear your input and get some feedback from you. And we have a couple of poll questions that we would like to ask. So, all right, so the first one is, how much time do you generally spend, how much time does your child generally spend in formal learning tasks each day? So if you can just select one, the first choice is fewer than 30 minutes, 31 to 60 minutes, 61 to 120 minutes, 121 minutes to 180 minutes, or more than 180 minutes. So I'm gonna give you guys about 10 seconds to answer the poll. I see that some of you are answering, which is great.
So about 43% have answered. You want to give it another 10 seconds or so, give people a chance?
Sure. That's great. About half of you have voted already, so give like another 5 seconds or so. Okay, it's kind of steady at 50, so go ahead and share the poll results. So, okay, so fewer than 30 minutes, about 5% if you said. 31 to 60 minutes is 14%. 61 to 120 minutes, 43% of you said that your child spends generally that much time. 121 to 180 minutes is 29%, and then more than 180 minutes is 10%. So that's interesting to see. About half of your children are spending between an hour and 2 hours. So thanks for sharing. We're going to ask just one more question, and the poll will be up in a moment. Okay, so which of the following issues have been challenges for you in recent weeks? So on this one, I'd like you to select all that apply. So has it been motivating your child to start schoolwork for the day, helping your child stay focused on their schoolwork, helping your child understand confusing tasks, finding time to finish schoolwork due to other obligations, and emotional or behavioral issues that disrupt learning? So we'll give you guys a while to, like maybe 10 seconds or so, 15 to answer. I see 30% of you have answered at this point. If give you guys a little more time to answer the poll, thanks. About 5 more seconds. Almost 50% of you have responded. Still some people responding. That's great. Almost 60%. All right, we're going to go ahead and close the poll. Kind of look at the results. Thanks. Okay, so for answering that poll, 61% of you are saying motivating your child to start the schoolwork for the day, and also 78%. Those are the two highest areas, helping your child stay focused on schoolwork. So 13% of you said helping your child understand confusing tasks, and then 26% finding time to finish schoolwork due to other obligations, and then 39% emotional and behavioral issues that disrupt learning. So I really appreciate you guys sharing, and a lot of these things are going to be addressed as we move further into the webinar. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Michelle. So I have the same. I have 2 small children, and I can say that I wanted to check off all of those. But certainly keeping them motivated is and making sure they're getting their work done was at the top for me as well. So
Sure.
Thanks, Michelle.
Sure.
So hi everyone. So you've already probably created a schedule to help your family stay on track during this time. And then you discarded the schedule, and then you tried again. We want to give you some tips to consider that can help you set and maintain a flexible schedule focused on letting you just accomplish your most important goals. We suggest narrowing your focus in this way because children do their best learning when they can stay focused and attentive, which is more difficult than usual right now for everyone, even students without previously identified needs. Caregivers do their best job of providing support when they can stay focused and attentive behavior, again, which is more difficult than usual right now for everyone. So you can set realistic learning goals for your family by honestly asking and answering questions about everyone's capacity for learning on any particular day. How much time can we spend on this activity with the learner maintaining focus and the adult maintaining calm? Once you know the answer to that question, you don't want to schedule the activity to last longer than that amount of time, and you want to definitely transition to a movement break or a preferred activity afterwards. You want to remember that kids have plenty of transition time in school, and they get many opportunities to shift their focus. So sitting at the kitchen table for 90 minutes straight, it's not business as usual. So be sure to think about age and stage appropriate standards for staying still and focused, and then to reduce that amount of time because of unusual circumstances. When in the day are we most likely to get something accomplished? Again, schedule it at the time that works best for your family. For my family, first thing in the morning is the best time. By the afternoon, especially on a beautiful day, my kids want to be outside playing. So we try to get everything done as soon as we can early in the morning. And you don't want to listen to what others are telling you to do it. You go by your gut. Go by what works best for your family. So this may mean getting all of your schoolwork out of the way early in the day, such as myself, or not even beginning to think about it until after lunch. Do what works for you. So next we're going to kind of talk about what to do to incentivize and what to ignore. Even once you have a schedule set, we know it can be challenging to convince a child to work or to accept your help. So we want to talk a bit about how to motivate or coax your child to get started working, which you can do by making it more appealing to begin the task, by putting out a snack, letting your child chew gum or have a lollipop, or pick a song to listen to quietly, and then letting them know that the next item on the to-do list after the task is complete is one that they're really excited to do, like go outside or watch a show or have a short dance party. With my daughter, I have 2 small children. They are 9 and 7, very different personalities. My daughter likes little stickers and a sticker chart, so she likes to know that she's going to get stickers when she completes her assignments. With my son, he wants to know that he'll have some time to watch TV or have some time on YouTube. So that's what motivates him. So you want to provide help in a way that does not increase friction between you and your child. This might mean using a very calm tone of voice, or giving less instruction than you would want, or giving more hints than you would want. But the goal is to get your child focused, get them engaged. So it's good to relax your expectations for exactly what that will look like and stick to what is working for your child in this moment. It's also important to remember that even when doing schoolwork, your kiddo is not at school, which is why we're making suggestions about snacks or music during work time to begin with. So ignoring behaviors that look to you like they aren't appropriate for school, maybe like reading upside down on a couch, can help your child keep moving through the tasks that you've decided are important to complete. Jamie?
Thank you. So as I'm listening to Stephanie talk, I think we are all experiencing these similar challenges. And it sounded from the poll like motivating your kiddos and helping them stay focused are really common issues that everyone is facing. We talked a little while ago about adjusting your expectations. And so as I begin to talk now about how to use your learning time really wisely with kiddos, I also want to mention how important it is to adjust our expectations around motivation and focus. Because what if you started to expect your child to be way less motivated to start schoolwork than they are right now, and to stay focused for half the time that you are expecting them to stay focused? It would mean that our answers to those poll questions were totally different, because all of a sudden it would look like your kiddos were killing it for staying focused for 6 minutes, right? Or 10 minutes, or whatever that might be. And so we really want to do these honest time and energy audits as families to say, what are we really capable of right now? It might look really different from what you wish the answer was, but having that clear appraisal of what you can work on together is what allows you to move on to figure out how you can use that learning time well and how you can really coach your child. So I want to ask you to look back for a second at the goal you wrote down earlier, because if getting motivated and staying focused is difficult for your child right now, and again, that's really understandable, then you want to use the time in that you have, the time that you're not focused on your work or on cooking dinner or folding laundry, to really hone in on that task that you're hoping you can complete with your child. And so what that means is that you're going to use the time that you have together to work on that particular goal. And the things that can be most effective for achieving that goal are really working slowly and thoroughly through the type of problem or task that is complicated for your child, and then engaging in repeated practice with that task over multiple learning sessions or over multiple days. And so before, I had mentioned reading fluency or math facts as areas that some families might be focusing on right now for foundational skills you really want to work on with your child. That might mean that if you're working on subtraction in single-digit numbers or in teen numbers, that you're going to think about how to spend 10 to 20 minutes each day focused on that goal, completing one worksheet together, taking out Cheerios or other manipulatives and practicing using those tangible objects, using flashcards, doing all of these different things that hit on that same goal, and giving your child gentle corrections and feedback throughout the process to achieve that goal that you have. And then you're going to let the other stuff that your child needs to get done for school get done in a less complete fashion, that you're going to let your child work on it independently, that you're going to skip out on some activities, and that you're doing this because you know, back to this idea that this is a marathon and not a sprint, that you want to let your child end this school year with that particular skill intact, and that it might be more effective to use your time in with your child to build that one skill and goal, rather than to try and manage all of the tasks that are assigned for that day or that week, and ask your child to do things in terms of motivation or focus that are just beyond their grasp right now. So it's really easy for me to say that from behind a computer screen when you are the one who needs to communicate with your child's teacher and stay on top of this work. And so the next thing that we want to do is to talk a little bit about how to communicate with teachers when keeping up with their expectations can be really difficult. And as we do that, I want to highlight here that that's one of the conversations we all had when we were preparing for this webinar, that all of us have had the experience of needing to say, you know what, my kiddo is just not up to this today or this week or this month. The expectations the school has right now are not ones that we can maintain as a family, or are not ones that we're choosing to maintain because we're protecting our mental health and our energy. So we know there might be a lot of pressure to keep up with work assigned by the school, and that you might also be feeling frustrated that the instructional supports your child requires are not being provided right now, or not provided in the same way during this time. And so we want to first think through how you can communicate with your child's teacher about the fact that some of this work is not something that your family is capable of addressing right now. And we'd recommend by going back to the questions that Stephanie raised before when you're bringing this up to a teacher. So once you know how much time you can spend on an activity while your child stays focused, and when in the day you're most likely to get something accomplished, you can, in a really non-confrontational and non-combative way, share that information with your teacher. Say, so here's what's going on for us. We've noticed that, our child is able to stay focused on these math tasks for around 15 minutes. To really complete all of them, it would take us about 40 minutes. And when we do that, he starts to get really frustrated and he's not doing his best work any longer. So are you comfortable with us submitting what we're able to complete in those first 15 minutes? And having an open conversation about what flexibility the teacher can provide to you, and then moving on from there to talk about what additional instruction or intervention can be provided when your child has additional areas of need. So rather than putting this all on yourself to coax your child through these tasks, finding out what other resources are available, and then thinking about what resources you'd like to be available in the long run. Our other 2 webinars that we're running later this summer are designed to talk about maintaining skills over time and the return to school in fall. And so I won't spend too much time on this today, but I will note that there are plans that you can put into place for fall evaluation, fall placement, fall supports, and you really want to work with your child's school and the IEP team at the school, if appropriate, to create a contingency plan for supports that can be provided now and then provided in the future. And this is one of those places where there is no great cookie cutter answer. We know there are families joining us today who have kiddos with such different types of needs, but our goal here is to really talk about how you can communicate with the school and be honest about what your capabilities are at home right now, given all of the other things that are going on. So as we move forward, Tatiana has added a question into the chat box here about questions that you might still have about creating a flexible schedule or building enriched learning time into your typical day. And we really want to give you an opportunity now to ask questions if we've skimmed over topics that feel important to you.
So Tatiana, do we have any questions in the question box?
I see all the questions that were asked were pertaining to the recording of this webinar. I see no questions that that are related to the flexible schedules and other learning times at this time.
Okay, great. So we'll move on. So thank you. So especially for children with substantial learning needs and for families who are challenged to find time to engage in formal learning tasks, it's important to think about the activities that you can engage in regularly without much fanfare that support academic growth as well. Some of the most effective coaching strategies we can share with you really boil down to engaging with your child at their level, about their interest, and giving feedback and corrections in a way that makes sense to them. So talk, talk, talk. Think about discussing the movies or TV shows that you listen to together. Ask questions about the books you read together and find out what happened during activities that you don't observe. Model problem solving and perspective taking during your daily life. Take time for shared reading. There's a handout in one of the handouts actually references peer, which is a strategy that you can use when reading with young children, or that you can get older children to use when they're reading to young children. Incorporate kids into your daily activities. A lot of skill building can take place in terms of, while you're cooking, learning to follow directions, measuring, all of those things that we do anyway. We can build, we can use for building skills in our children. Obviously screen time. Obviously screen time has become a big feature of home learning, as well as a conduit to family and friends and a source of entertainment and much needed distraction. It's tougher than ever to tell children not to use tablets or TV, and more helpful than ever to use those devices as a way to get a break. as a way to get breaks. I know my own children are a little bit older, and they work on Google Classroom and other online platforms, and so sometimes I know I walk in and I catch my son on playing Minecraft when I know he should be on Google Classroom. So it's hard to separate that screen time. But our focus is on finding moderation. As in all things, moderation is important. Remember that screens should always be used as a supplement to, rather than a replacement for, enriched time together. If your family's able to fit, in enriched time, go for it. But if you're at the point in the day where trying to get something actively accomplished together will lead to fights or tears, you're probably better off just letting your child watch a 30-minute show, even if that would not usually be your preference. We have to be a little bit flexible in these times. That said, do limit the duration of any screen time session. Even if you have more sessions per day than usual, let your child know how much time they will have with that activity and set them up as best you can to be agreeable to whatever activity comes next. Provide a variety of options for your child when selecting screen time activities, rather than relying on just one source. There are great resources out there for educational learning activities, including many kids' podcasts, and we'll share links to some of those at the end of the talk. Especially if screen time is very motivating to your child, make it contingent on completion of previously scheduled academic or non-preferential tasks and or physical activity. It's important to be honest about the fact that there are many hours to fill during the day, and that you need to attend to things other than your children: work, making dinner, your own basic needs. So during many of those hours, which means that it's important for us to think about ways to fill that time with varied activities. Of course, many of us will prefer to avoid screens as much as possible. And it's wonderful when we can engage our little ones in independent art and play activities. I gladly give you suggestions for all sorts of crossword puzzles and word search books and Lego challenges. But what we often struggle with is how to keep our kids engaged during times that we can't be active partners. And we all have times that we give in to requests like Jamie's son displayed here for a double feature. But it's generally better to find a variety of screen options, old favorites and new choices as well, so that your children can get information and stimulation from a variety of sources, which can somewhat help you replicate center time, like the center time they have in school. And keep kids from getting bored. And so to the degree that you're able, letting your child explore their own interests and dig deep into a topic can be a benefit of less structured learning time, a benefit that is. This will build their knowledge and vocabulary in areas that are meaningful to them, and you can revisit the topics together to enrich their understanding even more. We hope that we've been able to address many of these issues that you wanted to hear more about today, and do want to remind you that we have a webinar scheduled for later in the summer to talk more about the return to school and how you can handle that transition safely. But we want to take the remaining time that we have now to answer any additional questions that you might have. Please type them into the chat box. And don't forget to download the handouts again. There's information there that references effective ways to do online learning. Like I said, we have the save the date for our future webinars, as well as a list of PTI centers. So I know that there were some of you that registered from out of New Jersey. And whereas SPAN is New Jersey's PTI center, if you want to connect with your state's PTI center, that list is attached as one of the handouts for you. Tatiana, are there any questions? I'm sorry?
No, I see no questions at the time, but I think you did such a wonderful job really breaking down and making such complex topics easy to digest and in a very interactive and friendly way. I think our audience are very pleased. They are continuing to ask if this a webinar can be shared with others, and yes, of course, we just wanted to remind everyone that this webinar is being recorded, and the link to the recording will be available in a few days, along with the materials and handouts, and will be emailed to you and posted on our website. So please do share it widely with your colleagues, with your families, and encourage them to learn. I believe we have a question. Can things like virtual museum, field trips, and other virtual activities be helpful? What a great question.
That is a great question. Jamie, did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I think that is a really great strategy to use when we're talking about how screen time can be a real enrichment activity and supplement to what you're doing already at home. And so one of the ways that you can use a virtual field trip like that is simply to add something new and novel to your day, which is wonderful. And another way you could think about using it is to build on something that your child has been asked to learn about for school, or something that you've been reading about independently. So I think we are all trying here not to be too aspirational and pie in the sky. And so I don't want to say, like, you should do a whole month on penguins and, you know, Antarctica in your family, because you might not have time for that right now. But it also might be that what is most engaging to your child is doing a deep dive into one animal family and habitat, or into one artist or one part of the world. And if that's the case, then what a wonderful way to use this time that you have on your hands right now. So many zoos and museums have created really great resources for families. And I think you really should feel free to either dabble in that, spend 20 minutes looking at an animal cam and call it a day, or do that deeper dive and make that sort of the foundation for a unit you're doing in your family learning. And it looks like other folks have thoughts about this as well.
Absolutely. Sure. I enjoyed very much taking a field trip of a national parks, or a garden, a tulip garden in Holland somewhere. So those are phenomenal and very therapeutic as well.
I've been able to offer it as well to my children as even something as an incentive. It was a way to get them interested. I gave them a choice of a few different ones. There's websites that list different virtual field trips, and I gave them the option of choosing. So I also look for all of those opportunities too, for my children to feel empowered and to make a decision and to be actively engaged and involved as well. So I think it's a great tool, and their teachers were okay with it as well for fulfilling a science or a social studies activity, which was nice too.
It's terrific.
And Stephanie, you reminded me, I wanted to just add to that, because I was thinking about the challenges that have come up for so many of us around motivation and staying focused. And the way I often use activities like this is really to pair them with an academic task that my son is not so excited about. So Tatiana was saying visiting tulips, let's say. So if my son was asked to read a short story for school about flowers, I might say, all right, let's spend 7 minutes looking over this activity together. We're going to read about this, and then we're going to spend 20 minutes looking on the internet about tulips and going to this website. And after that, we're going to go outside and look at some flowers after we answer 2 quick questions, right? And that really is, I'm thinking about how many of you are spending 120 minutes to over 180 minutes on learning activities each day. In school, there is so much time that is spent on transitions or socialization or moving to a new place. And I think a lot of us feel really obligated as parents to have our kids sit down and stay focused and get through all of it. But really doing something like going on the internet for 15 to 20 minutes to look at those tulips and then dance around in flowers if you can and have a snack is what the school day looks like. So I think that so many of us are doing a lot of work with our kids right now and still feeling stressed that we're not doing enough? It's a really great question.
Oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
It's a perfect segue to our next question. You mentioned that families' needs vary greatly under the current circumstances, and one of those needs being not necessarily having access to outdoor space, depending where you live. And our next question is, what physical activities would you suggest for students without access to outdoor space?
Well, there are a lot. I just wanted to say real quick, there are just a ton of YouTube like workout videos aimed at kids. I mean, from, kid yoga to they have now like a Marvel Comics workout, which are brief. They're not long, they're kid length. So, maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes where you can work out like a superhero. And those are wonderful. And yeah.
Go Noodle is another one. Children love Go Noodle, but that's also an opportunity too to reach out to even the gym teacher or the school, or if your child does have if your child has related services and they're receiving PT or OT, it could also be an opportunity to ask the therapist as well, what are some things that we can do at home as well to target some of those and to get out the physical. There's even things you could do like leaning against a wall, just again, getting that input and things like that you can do. But certainly that's where your gym teacher, you want to utilize those resources as well at the school. Everyone I feel in this situation, roles are being redefined in a way. So it's an opportunity to engage your child's teacher and get them to provide you with some more information, maybe thinking a little bit out of the box.
And I think that's really important. Thinking out of the box and thinking about kids' different needs is really important here, because I know that the videos that are sent home from my school for phys ed and Go Noodles is so great for getting my son sort of energetic in the morning and getting ready to start the day. But it doesn't get at some of those dense motor needs that some of our kids have. And so when you don't have outdoor space and you don't have other little people to hurl your body into for a lot of the day, it can be really challenging because some kids really want to roll on something or to feel their muscles being used. And so I think that Stephanie's suggestion to reach out to PT and OT, even if that's not a service your child already received, can be really helpful for getting suggestions like the leaning against a wall, or if you have a foam roller that you use as an adult because of your own PT need, actually letting your kid use some of those materials at home in ways that you wouldn't in normal circumstances, just to roll on something or bounce on a bouncy ball. I know my husband and I have found ourselves doing a lot more roughhousing and wrestling than we would do under normal circumstances, because there's not as many people to do that with, right? And so for kids who need to get their energy out certain ways, you as an adult now are playing the role of another kid on the playground. And I think anything that comes up through suggestions, either even if it's just from a PT or OT blog, can be really useful as well.
I just wanted to let you know that we get a lot of comments in our questions pane about the great ideas that we've been sharing. And if I may, we have another question. This person is asking what if you would suggest weekly unit studies. I think it's in reference to the earlier conversation that we had with enriched learning opportunities.
So what's the question, Tatiana?
Would you suggest weekly unit studies? If this educator, it seems like it comes from an educator, would like to elaborate what you meant, but I think the question came up when we were discussing the virtual field trips and how to incorporate that information in our curriculum and expanding choices for lessons and student learning.
I mean, I think the broad answer I'd start off by giving is that I think for a lot of families right now, one of the challenges we face is that there are so many different worksheets being sent home or apps to log into, and it feels like, the phrase that people often use is curriculum is like a mile long but an inch deep. So you need to do all of these different things, and none of them really hit on that one learning goal that you identified earlier. And so if we're able to think about any sort of studying a particular unit or a topic in more depth, then I think that's really helpful to adults because it helps us organize our time and our thinking about what a kiddo is doing. And it also gives our kid more repeated practice with that same word or concept. So whether that is a vocabulary word and a semantic web that they're building or a time in history that they're learning about, just repeated exposure is going to be more beneficial. And that's a great way to be using our time wisely. So I think what all of us would say too, though, is if you as another parent on this call heard unit study and we're like, what? I don't have time for that. I don't know how I could possibly accomplish that with my kiddo. It means it's not the right thing for you and your family right now. And that's also absolutely okay. But if you have the time and attention and focus and motivation to do things that do fall into that same area, that is likely going to be more beneficial to you than trying to get done 9 worksheets that are all on disparate topics.
Great. And the author of this question says, yes, exactly. And another comment we just received that someone is sharing that they're very happy they sign up for this. And I have to rethink how I schedule the day to include breaks and meet emotional needs instead of trying to be more efficient. And we have another question, if we have time. This comes from a mother of 2 young children who's also doing teacher distance learning as well. I guess it's a mother and an educator. I feel I'm spending more time online with my child. My both children are 3 and 7. My 7-year-old have her own distance learning, and she struggles with writing because both parents are deaf, which I am deaf. And she can read and comprehend, yet can't put them on paper. That's how, what can I do?
And so I think that seems, if I understood the question correctly, Tatiana, it sounds like this is a mom who is both doing her own work during the day, so a distance educator who's supporting a classroom of students and has a 3 and 7-year-old at home, and additionally has challenges around both parents being deaf and are trying to support a learner in a school system where the modality of communication might be different than what they're used to at home. So if all of that is the case, I think we want to start off by saying what you should be doing is celebrating yourself, getting a lot of accolades for all the incredible work you're doing for your family and the students that you work with, and maintaining learning during this really difficult time. That sounds like a really challenging situation. I don't know if
and other participants in the webinar chiming in, I think, are answering this question. They're suggesting to use dictation apps or other software, accessibility software. So thank you very much for everyone also sharing their ideas. And
Jamie, did you have something else to say to that?
I think that's actually a great suggestion, dictation apps and other software. And I think I would go back to what Stephanie recommended before about reaching out to your child's school and related providers. Absolutely. There.
Absolutely, connecting with them. And also, I noticed Google Meet, for example, has closed caption. You know, which is if your school is using any live instruction, they use Google Meet, or there are some others. I know we've done some research on our team, and maybe we could even share that at some point. Sure. Some resources that we have that have done. You can pull that up. Technology for engaging families. We have that as well, which includes that information. But I do know, like Google Meet, for example, has closed caption. And so let's say, for example, and I'm just hypothetically speaking here, let's say Zoom does not have that option, but Google Meet does. Again, that's when you want to contact your school district or your child's teacher and say, listen, for me, in order for me to be engaged and for me to participate and work with my child, we would need to work on a platform that's more accessible for me. So that's another way to address it. But it's constantly trying to build that engagement with your district as well.
Okay, I just posted a link to our quick guide that we published just recently. How can parent groups or educators, anyone at school, district leaders use technology to strengthen family engagement? Or those same strategies and best practices are good for engaging parents and engaging groups and engaging our kids in education. And yes, we do know that you're doing the best. Another comment from the author of this a wonderful question, interesting question, is that yeah, we know you are yes, we know you're doing your best, and this person also in the process learned a lot of great info. Okay, here's the question, comes from what seems like an educator as well. How we can get students online when parents are not logging into Google. We've also heard that this has been also a challenge for various reasons, whether it is availability of devices or networking capacity, or some other challenging circumstances.
That would be my first.
Looking into what those reasons are.
Right.
And I know that is challenging for teachers, just like it's challenging for parents, but, you know, making that phone call, really connecting with the parent to find out what's going on. Why isn't it happening? You know, you could be in a situation where maybe that parent's a teacher too, like the last young lady spoke about, and she's trying to take care of the kids in her classroom and, you know, making sure her children are getting what they need as far as the support to be able to learn. So it's really that connection that, you know, everyone, the parents have to get back to the teachers and the teachers to the parents to see what's going on. Are they overwhelmed? How they can assist, because it might not just be a school issue. As we know, COVID has made every issue bigger than it was before. So if there are other issues going on as far as the home, socially, economically, all of that, it's going to be even harder. So that kind of connect.
Sometimes, and for districts that aren't already doing this, it's important to remember that a lot of times asynchronous learning is where, you know, it's very beneficial. So, you know, when we're talking about logging on live, maybe all families are not able to log on at the same time. They're sharing a computer, or, you know, parents aren't there to support them. So we want to make sure that that instruction is available at different times, you know, as a recording, or so like, but most importantly, like Michelle said, is communication. You know, we want to find out why the families aren't logging on and see if we can.
I wanted to also, I'm going to be posting in the chat box a really great resource that I came across yesterday on distance learning. And there's a template. It's available in English and in Spanish. There's a family check-in. And I think it's a great tool to have. And it talks about what's working and what are some of the challenges that you're having. And again, it's a nice way to engage with families. So I'm going to put that in the chat box as well. And feel free to, you know, to take that and download it. Let's see if that works.
Stephanie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was just going to add really briefly onto all of these great points, and especially what Michelle said originally about communication. I think that on both sides, to really be able to normalize the experience that families or that educators are having. So if you're reaching out to a parent as a teacher, being able to say, I know some families in our school don't have Wi-Fi or don't have enough devices for everybody in their family to be logged on at the same time. Some families are struggling with kiddos who are tantruming first thing in the morning and really won't log on to a device at this time. So, you know, rather than making a family feel like their experience is unique or making them feel a stigma about the fact that they haven't been signing on, letting them know that this is a challenge that's been coming up for all of us, and we didn't prepare for it in advance because we didn't know we were going to shelter in place. And then again, back to celebrating the small successes. If there's a kiddo who has not been logging on at all and they show up one day next week, then that is them making an effort to participate and engage. And we really want to build on that rather than focusing on the fact that they were still only there part of the time. And I think this is all a work in progress for everybody.
Mm-hmm. As well as work in progress, which seems like the answer might be at the moment for our next question. Somebody is wondering, for those students whose parents speak another language, what translation services or what interpretation services are out there that we might heard of or recommend or like best. We are keenly aware at SPAN about all the struggles that families are having, or non-English speaking families are having at this time, where perhaps the packets that the schools send home or all the communication that goes from schools to the parents is in English, and they don't speak or read English. So do you have any suggestions, recommendations for this particular?
Again, I think this goes back to reaching out to your school district and saying, in order for me to support my children at home, I really need this in my language. You know, I need this in Spanish. And that's step one, I think, and that's kind of the low-hanging fruit is, you know, we really want to reach out to our schools and let them know what it is that we need. And Stephanie, you look like you had a suggestion.
I did, and I have an app, and the name is escaping me right now. So when we do a follow-up, I will include the name of the app. Debbie, we've talked about this. There's an app, and it's
Oh, right. I can't remember the name of it either.
The name of it. I'm having a moment, but it's an app that's actually available, and it translates into so many different languages, and it's a great tool for engaging those parents of students whose English, you know, if English is not their first language. And I just can't think of it right now, but I
include it in the follow-up. Yeah.
But I really want to emphasize again what Debbie said about reaching out to your district, because it is not your job as a parent to, on top of everything that we've talked about today already that is so challenging, to also translate all of those worksheets and all of those instructional materials so you can provide this support. So again, we said before, reaching out in a way that's not combative, but saying, you know, I'm an English language learner, and it's very hard for me to understand this material when it's provided to me in English. What have you been doing for families in the district who speak other languages at home? Because you're not the only family in that position, and there should be a translation service within the district or a parent liaison. And if that's not something the district has considered yet, then you are doing advocacy work for other families in the district and raising awareness about the fact that there's this additional learning challenge that the district is not handling well. But that's not on you, or it should not be on you. That should really be on the district to figure out and provide those supports.
Absolutely. People are chiming in to also suggest to use Google Translate.
And one thing I wanted to point out that it is 3 o'clock. So, I mean, I'm more than happy to sit, and, you know, this is our passion. And so I'm more than happy to sit, but we just wanted to make people aware.
Thank you very much for your question.
Yeah, thank you for your question. And if you have questions that, you know, we didn't get to and you need to leave, please email them to us at the email that was provided, and that will be provided again at the end. But I don't know if Michelle wanted to go ahead and close out, and then we're happy to stay on and talk.
Sure.
But Michelle, if you wanted to go ahead and do that, and I will do that. So Michelle, sorry. Let me go back.
Yeah, no, because way too much after 3. I don't know if my little one, who's quite a big one, might come in. This is live. So, all right. So I just want to really, you know, from all of us, just really say thank you for everyone for not only, you know, coming here today and being part of this webinar and listening, but your time and your commitment to helping the children that you work with and, you know, your own children. We all want to make sure they reach their fullest potential. And it's so great that you guys are doing that. At SPAN, we really try to make sure that we bring resources to families and to professionals who are concerned about the achievement and the well-being of all children. So please just take a minute, though, to give us your feedback as far as the webinar. The webinar evaluation is going to pop up as soon as you close the screen. So if you want to stay on extra time, if you have some questions, that's fine. But as soon as you close your screen, the evaluation is going to pop up. If you wait till later to do it, you're probably not going to be able to. So if you can take a moment and do it when it pops up, that would be great. Because we really do use that information to create resources and information and workshops and webinars, and then even for discussions for the special education parent advisory groups that we all work so closely with. So as I said again, if you have a question that you think of even after the webinar is over, later on today, tomorrow, whenever, look at the contact information here on the screen. You can always reach out to us to have any questions answered. So, you know, for now, that's going to conclude the main portion of the webinar. And you guys have just a wonderful day, and so glad of your participation.
Thank you. Having said that, Tatiana, were there any more questions in that?
I think we're good.
We are.
Great.
I did see a question. Someone asked, is it worth doing the ESY remotely? I don't think we discussed
no,
that.
I didn't see that one. Oh.
So I can, my take on, and for those of you who aren't familiar, that's extended school year. So for children who receive special education services, may be found eligible for ESY. And I would think for us, I know in our state and probably many places, it's going to be done virtually. And I think that's a conversation that you need to have with, I'm hearing different things. I've heard some parents, kind of say, okay, I'm done, like I'm out, I need a break, my child needs a break. So I've seen some people say that, and others, such as myself, because my son will be in ESY this summer, I'm going back and forth with his case manager to really understand what ESY is looking like this summer. I personally think it's going to be, I'm calling it the a la carte ESY program this summer, where it's going to be very virtual, and we're going to see maybe be able, some parents are asking just for maybe related services, maybe just getting OT or getting PT. Others are looking for more instruction. My concern is I don't want my son to have regression, and I want to make sure that his skills and whatever we're learning at home, if we could do some live instruction during ESY with his teacher, I want to make sure we're working on those skills. So I feel for my son, it will be worthwhile and beneficial. It really depends on what it's going to look like. I would encourage you as the parent to work with the case manager and understand what it's going to look like this summer for your child.
That makes sense. Thanks, Stephanie. Tatiana?
Nope, I'm sorry I missed that one. I don't see any other questions that we haven't already addressed.
Well, I want to thank everybody for, like Michelle said, coming to the webinar, and thank you for everything that you're doing for your families and for your children. Thank you, Dr. Zawolski, for all of your work and helping us with this webinar. We always enjoy working with you.
I was glad to join everybody. Thank you all so much.
That'll be it. Enjoy your day, and please, everyone, stay safe.